What's going on, everybody? Marvel the Cross 316 back with another comic book flashback. And today, folks, we are looking at the Amazing Spider-Man issue number 103. This issue came out in December of 1971, and we see that Spider-Man is swinging in the jungles of Kazar's Savage Land. And we're going to be seeing some pretty good stuff here. We also see Gwen Stacy's on the cover, and oh my goodness, she's in a bikini. And so, wow, just great stuff here. So let's go ahead now and continue as we continue to look at volume 1 of this series here, The Amazing Spider-Man. We also have Gog here. He's going to be the main villain in this issue. So pretty cool stuff. We have today's title, Walk the Savage Land. And this issue is brought to you by Stan Lee, who edited this issue. We have Roy Thomas, who wrote this issue. Gil Kane on the artwork. We also have Frank Giashoa on the inking and Artie Simek on the lettering page. And man, what a splash page. You could tell this is drawn by Gil Kane, because one thing that you will note is the way he draws people's faces, especially the nose. That's a key characteristic when it looks like this. But anyway, let's go ahead and continue. We see that Spider-Man is taking down a bunch of thugs here. As usual, he's just these common day thugs trying to get away with things here. And we see that a lot of things are on Spider-Man's mind. One being that he's trying to have to think about how he's going to approach Gwen after going AWOL these past few days. We recall from last issue that he had to cure his body from the 4 extra arms that he had grown after taking the serum to try to rid his body of his Spider-Man powers. But that didn't do any good, and it only got him into a lot of trouble. And he also had to fight the great villainous man called Morbius. We don't know exactly if he died or not last issue, but we won't be seeing Morbius in this issue. And so he notices that there's these 2 other guys he didn't take down, so he takes them down. He said, man, I've not been concentrating. Maybe I'd better leave the daring do to the boys in blue for tonight and go back to figuring out a way to make up with my girl. Of course, I could just tell her that I grew 4 extra arms and had to blow town a couple of days. Nah, level-headed chick like my Gwendolyn would never fall for a fairy tale like that just because it happens to be true. And then he's like, wonder why J. Jonah Jameson's light is on in his office at this time of night. And we notice that Jameson is holding a meeting here. We noticed last issue that Jameson let his staff know that the Daily Bugle is not doing good in terms of revenue, and they could go out of business. There could not be a Daily Bugle. So they're trying to figure out drastic measures of what they're going to have to do to save their company. And while he's talking, he notices that there's the TV on, and they're talking about this dinosaur. And he's like, hold up, Sam. That guy talking to Cavett. Said, oh, him? Last night he was with Carson, Johnny Carson. And he said, not a dinosaur, Dick, but something far more dangerous, monstrous. But no one will believe me. So we see here that this guy here is retelling his story of how he went to Antarctica just a few weeks ago. And he says, I was acting as a guide to 2 scientists on a geophysical survey on the fringes of an unexplored region when one night this colossal thing attacked our camp, destroyed it, then fled back into the dark icy waste. The other 2 men are still in a coma, but I guess I got lucky. Here I am. I'm no artist, but I've done a sketch of the monster. And then the guy's like, JJ, shouldn't we? He said, I said clam up. What, would you look at that? And he said, wow. He said, that is what's going to help the Daily Bugle get back into the swing of things. That is going to help our paper. We need to go to Kazar's hidden jungle and get some photographs of that monster. And everybody's looking at Jameson like has 2 heads, but The reality is, Jameson is willing to do anything to help his newspaper get better because they've not been selling newspapers lately. And so this is his grand scheme as we see. And he's like, I want everybody to get out of the room except for Joe Robertson. He's the only one I can depend on. And Joe Robertson's like, they're good men, Jonah. You shouldn't be so hard on them. He said, forget them. It's Calkin, and I want Parker. And then we see that Joe Robertson's going to be like, well, you got to understand, Jameson, that he's a young guy. I mean, he's in his early 20s, and he said, I don't care how old he is. He's one of our best photographers, and he needs to come on this trip. He says, either you call him or you go pick up your severance pay, and I'll do it. Think it over, mister. So finally, we see Peter and Gwen are going to get back together. Peter can't really explain to Gwen exactly what happened and why he went AWOL these past couple of days. But as they walk into her apartment, we see that there's a phone call, and it's for Peter. And we see that Joe Robertson is going to tell Peter that he wants Peter to accompany Jameson on this trip. There'll be a cash bonus. And we see that Peter agrees, but Gwen is not happy about Peter going on this dangerous trip. And so what he's going to do is he's going to drag Gwen along, brings her to the Daily Bugle, and we see that as they're talking to Jameson, Jameson says, I've got it. By George, I've got it. You're the missing ingredient I've been wrecking my brain for. He said, yes, I mean you, Gwen Stacy. He said, you're going to go on this trip because you're going to help sell these papers. He said, what do you mean? And he said, every guy needs to see a pretty face on a newspaper, plus the woman's angle. They buy papers too, you know. He says, it's all very tempting. I could use the money too. He said, then say yes. Calkin's on his way here right now. I've got to know. We see Robertson's like, let them think, Jonah. But finally, Gwen says, A-okay to going. And so they're going to board a flight to Antarctica, of all places. And they even have to get on a boat, too. And it's the funny part here where Jameson says, what do you mean you left the seasick pills in my other pants, Parker? And so finally, they're going to be picked up on this boat. And this is where they finally get to Antarctica and the Savage Land. And so they land, and we see here that Calkin here is going to accompany Peter Parker, Gwen, and Jameson here on this journey. He says, after decimating our camp, the creature stalked off in this direction. So tell me, Mr. Jameson, hasn't it occurred to you that I might be a fraud or just plain loony? But Jameson says, Calkin, I've got a multi-million-dollar business at stake in this little venture. At this stage, I can't afford even to consider that possibility. He said, thanks for that, my friend, because that devil was real, all right. And I only hope the moment never comes when we wish it hadn't been. So they're going to get on this plane here, and they're going to travel to the Savage Land. And while they're on flight, they come across this flying dinosaur, this pteranodon. I can't remember what they're called. But anyways, a flying dinosaur. And like, wow, I can't believe this. This is crazy. All this prehistoric animals are living in this hidden jungle away from society. And more people are finding out about it. And I think that Kazar's not going to like it. So we see they get out of the plane. Jameson tells Gwen that she needs to get into her outfit. Peter's like, what outfit? And so they wait for a couple of minutes, and here she is in her bathing suit. So, of course, Jameson's using this because who wouldn't pick up a newspaper with a hot chick like Gwen on the cover of it? So Peter Parker takes some pictures of Gwen, and then he's like, Parker, that's enough shots of the girl for now. Over here, fast. He says, now what? Must have found a buffalo nickel. But as we go into part 2, they come across this ancient temple with this snake head here, and there's this big symbol here, and Jameson has picked up the stick to hit the gong here, and so he says, "I've been thinking, sir, why track down a man-killer like Mr. Calkins' monster? Wouldn't a series on this hidden jungle itself be just as good?" But Jameson says, "No, we need to get some photographs of this monster. It's the only way." Then he hits the symbol, bong, and all of a sudden a bunch of these tribesmen come out, and they think that Peter Parker thinks that they're afraid of this guy's rifle, but instead it's because they're afraid of this snake head. There's something very peculiar about this. Someone built this, and we're going to find out exactly who it was. And so finally, Peter's like, "We're in a bad situation here." They start charging at him, but then they stop when all of a sudden they cry out, "It's Gog!" And here is that monster that we were thinking about, and he's on the cover. Here he is, a humongous monster here, and he's after Gwen. And why do I say that? Because he then picks her up. They start shooting at Gog here. Peter then makes a run for it. He's going to try to throw a bunch of these gas bombs at Gog here, but instead he's not successful as Gog hits Peter Parker and swats him like a fly, and Peter is sent careening and falls into this river. Jameson thinks that Peter has died. He's drowned in the river, but if he would have waited just a few more minutes or seconds, he would have noted that Peter got out safely. Peter's like, "I'm glad that I brought my Spider-Man costume with me because of things and threats that I thought we would run into." He said, "Well, they're going to have to say bye-bye to my secret identity once they find out that Spider-Man is swinging here. But I gotta save Gwen. There's no matter what I have to worry about. Gwen is my main issue and my main concern, saving Gwen's life." But we see that Gog is bringing Gwen for a purpose, and that is to bring Gwen to this figure right here. That's right, folks. Kraven the Hunter has returned, and he is the mastermind behind all of this. And he said that he's setting up his kingdom right here in the Savage Land, and he needs a queen. And what better queen to have than Gwen Stacy? So we see that Jameson now is on search for Gwen as well. He peeks his head out of the brush when he comes across the saber-tooth tiger of Kazar. So finally, Kazar learns that his Savage Land has been interrupted here by Jameson and his friends here, and he promises Jameson that he'll go find the girl for them, and after that, you will leave my land forever. So we see here that Kazar and Zabu are going to go try to save Gwen. Meanwhile, Spider-Man now swinging through the Savage Land jungle. He comes across this big serpent here. He dodges the serpent by throwing this huge stick right into the mouth of this serpent here. Pretty cool stuff and pretty funny stuff. He sees that Gog has gone through this little river here. He doesn't want to swim in it because he doesn't know what kind of creatures lie beneath the river. So he's going to launch himself with this little sampling here, and launch himself like a boomerang or a spring. And he makes himself all the way through the river here in the air, but instead he's going to fall right into this big trap of mud. But it's no ordinary mud, folks. It is quicksand. How is our hero, Spider-Man, going to get out of this situation? His body is going down into this quicksand, and he has nothing to grab himself out of this situation. How is Spider-Man going to get out of this situation? Will Gwen be saved? And will the threat of Kraven the Hunter pose any problems as well? We're going to find all this out as we continue to look at this series. We'll be looking at issue number 104 coming up next. But before we look at that, go ahead now and give this video a like, subscribe if you have not, comment down below what you think is going to happen up next, and I'll see y'all in the next one.